Welcome to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Hannah O'Brien, both a veteran spouse and the program manager for the Veteran Spouse Network. On each episode of our show, I will host different guests to learn more about the stories, unmet needs, and resources available to our military and veteran families. We're the show that's making space for your stories, so that here you know you're never alone.
Welcome back to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast. Today's episode is a little different and a lot more personal. If you're part of this community, you already know that PTSD doesn't just impact the veteran, it impacts the entire family, especially the partner walking alongside them. It can show up as distance, shutdown, irritability, or silence. And for many spouses, that can leave you feeling confused, disconnected, and sometimes even alone in your own relationship. We hear it all the time from you guys. I just wish I understood what my partner was experiencing. I don't know how to support them without losing myself. I wish I could hear from someone who actually lives with this. And that's exactly why we wanted to create this episode. So today I'm sitting down with my husband, a Marine Corps veteran living with PTSD, and we're doing something we've never done quite like this before. We actually asked you, our community, to submit your questions. The ones you've been holding, the ones you've been afraid to ask, and the ones you just need honest insight into. But beyond the questions, this conversation is really about something deeper. It's about what it looks like to live this, not just individually, but together. Because behind the labels of veteran and spouse, we are also just two people trying to navigate love, connection, and healing in the middle of something that can feel really heavy at times. There have been moments where PTSD has created distance between us and moments where it's forced us to grow in ways we've never expected. So today, you're not just hearing from a veteran living with PTSD, you're hearing from a husband and from a couple who is actively working through what this looks like in real life. Our hope is that this conversation helps you feel less alone, gives you a deeper understanding of your partner, and reminds you that there's space for both compassion for them and care for yourself too. But as we always say, we're speaking from our experience. Cody's experience with PTSD certainly looks different from other veterans. How I experience his PTSD may not be how you experience your veteran's PTSD. And as a result, just because something works for us doesn't mean it will work or even feel right to you. But we still hope this is valuable. So before we get into your questions, if you haven't heard one of the episodes that Cody's been on, I thought it would be helpful just for him to give us kind of the highlights of his military experience, timeline of the challenges with PTS, his diagnosis, meeting me, all those good things just to help give us a little context. So welcome to my husband.
Thank you for having me again. I'd like to just first and foremost say thank you. I know you trust me to help when and where I can here on this podcast, so I appreciate everybody um, listening today. So I guess just to kick it off, initially my military experience, I enlisted in the Marine Corps at the age of 22 in 2003. I was medically separated with honorable discharge in 2010. I was injured on my second deployment. Both deployments were to Iraq. And I wasn't initially diagnosed with PTSD for a few years after I got out. Initially, I had started the paperwork like before I even got out, but didn't get my diagnosis, my first diagnosis for about 2 years. And of course, at that time, it was about an 18 to 24 month waiting period for the VA. I know they say that has improved now, but I can't speak from personal experience what that potentially might be today. Um, Initially in 2012, I was diagnosed with mixed anxiety, essentially, which I felt that was a little underplayed from what I was feeling and experiencing in my day-to-day life. So I filed an appeal, and not to say any of this paperwork is easy. I know it's not. But about a year later, I filed an appeal, and very quickly, it was within a year, I received a secondary diagnosis with an increase in rating, essentially, uh, of verbatim PTSD. So fast forward a couple more years, I met Hannah in 2015. Um, we dated for a while. I had my issues dealing with my PTSD for those first few years that we were dating. I had essentially pulled back more than once. Um, but eventually came to my senses that I was in love with this person and proposed in 2019, married in 2020. That was fun.
Something.
And fast forward just a little bit to 2023, we had an amazing daughter. In 2025, had our second child, a very handsome and crazy little boy son. And here we are today, married, going on 6 years this year, with two little ones.
So we've been in it individually and together. So that's where we'll be speaking from today.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, this is a compilation of kind of your questions, things that we've heard in groups, people kind of wanting more insight into when it feels like maybe their veteran is not in a place to be forthcoming about these sorts of things, which we'll talk about that too. So let's take it back to when you were still active and maybe transitioning out, like that kind of still active duty mindset. What was your understanding of PTSD and your perception of PTSD at that time?
So I had initially after my first deployment, just to take it back just a little bit, my initial exposure to another Marine with PTSD was right after my first deployment. It was one of the guys that I had served in country with, in my platoon, and um, we'd kind of seen his, we just thought it was his personality. He was very, um, well, I don't want to put a label on it or anything, a name on it, but we just noticed that he was very just intense all the time, and which, a part of that is just being a Marine. Everything you do is with speed and intensity. But there's something just a little different about it. And so after our first deployment, he kind of left our platoon for a few weeks, and then he came back. And initially, he kept it on the DL. Essentially, didn't tell very many people. But I was one of the entrusted ones that he spoke to one-on-one and said that he had been diagnosed with PTSD. So they immediately made him non-deployable. So that was something that gave it a kind of a negative, uh, connotation of, oh, PTSD is bad, meaning you're not useful if you can't deploy.
Yeah.
And so it just, became this largely, negative black cloud type of thing. Um, so then fast forwarding to where when I was transitioning out, when I was still active duty, but transitioning out, you answer a lot of questionnaires and surveys, when you're going through the TAP class, transition assistance class. Um, and essentially, you don't want to be labeled with this black cloud, around you. So you answer no to everything, essentially, or at least you want to. Now, the VA reps that had walked us through this class and these surveys and forms and everything had basically said, hey, be 100% honest because you want it to be identified now because chances are you won't be able to get it identified later. So put it down, and they said just put everything down, just mark it down, be 100% truthful. Um, and that was hard to do because you didn't want it to come to light that oh hey I think I might be dealing with something, or yes I did experience this one thing, and no I don't know how it's affecting me right now, I just know it is affecting me. So before even getting out and transitioning out, it was there was this fear surrounding being labeled with PTSD.
And do you might know now, did you know then, or do you know now, I guess, um, like what the fear was attached to? Like you're like, didn't want that to come out. Like
Uh,
why?
I think a lot of that was judgment. You don't want to be judged. You don't want to be looked at differently, because you still want to be looked at as this honorable person that, served, uh, you know, honorably, that you did everything that, was required of you, and then some, carrying that title of, a Marine. And yeah, just the judgment, the fear surrounding, being looked at differently, being looked at negatively, because like I said, there was this, negative outlook on, that label of PTSD.
I'm digging more on him because I know he can handle it because he's my husband. So I'm gonna dig a little bit more. Like you're saying, oh, we wanted to be looked at as honorable. No, there's this judgment. Like, what's the feeling underpinned? I'm afraid that I will be seen as blank.
Oh, weak.
There we go.
Yeah, PTSD was a sign of weakness. I don't know, I can't tell you how many times that, it's drilled into your head, and then you believe it too. And it's something that sticks with you. Even today, I've been out for, over a decade, 16 years this
Mhm.
year. And, it's still something that, goes through my head, that you're constantly told you're no different than anybody else. Everybody is just like you. You're just like everybody else. You're no different. And if you are, you're weak,
Who wants to feel that way?
especially when it comes to mental health.
Yeah. One of the questions we got that I think is especially helpful for, say, like spouses like me, who they didn't get to experience military life with their partner, maybe know very little about the military altogether, and so um, they're getting what the news feeds, what Hollywood feeds, all those sorts of things. And so one of the questions we got was, what do they get wrong? What does Hollywood and civilian life get wrong about veterans living with PTSD, and kind of what are some of those stereotypes that you'd want to squash if you could?
Yes, Hollywood. Very entertaining. I'm not gonna lie, but it is hard to watch a movie or a show and not immediately start just picking it apart, But you try not to, because you don't want to ruin the movie for everybody else. And I try to not to ruin it for myself too. I want to enjoy it too. But Hollywood, let's see. The question was, what does Hollywood and what do Hollywood and civilians get wrong?
But specifically about PTSD, I
Yeah,
know
yeah. Oh yeah.
he could
Oh
go
yeah.
on and on. We'll subject
We
that.
could have a whole
Yeah.
podcast on that alone.
Yeah.
So about PTSD, I'd say initially, first thing that pops in my head is the subject of flashbacks. That's, like I said, very entertaining on TV. But you know, I have to say, and I can only speak from my own personal experience and from other, veterans that I'm still friends with today. Um, that the flashbacks that Hollywood likes to represent are not accurate in almost any form or fashion. A flashback is not, at least for me, again, I can only speak for myself. I do not have this visual representation that appears in front of me that makes me think I am back in the sandbox. I do not see, insurgents in front of me. Or I do not does not when I look down my street, my neighborhood, it does not look like, all of a sudden I'm walking down, some village dirt road or something like that. It's not what flashbacks look like, and you don't actually, when people say, "Oh, it feels like I'm back there," you're not feeling like you're actually experiencing it like you're back there again 100%. That's not what it is. Um, so they got that horribly wrong. It's drastically exaggerated.
Makes it seem like it's like a hallucination.
Yes, they make it seem like a hallucination, and it is not, like in any form or fashion. Not a hallucination. We're not on shrooms over here. Um, and and same thing with Hollywood and civilians. And like I can't speak for all civilians either, but it just seems like a stereotype of it is the aggression. That all veterans living with PTSD are, aggressive and angry, all the time. No, that is not the fact. That's, the aggression and anger, it's a result of PTSD, but is not something that we're just not sitting there stewing in our own anger, just waiting to be aggressive with somebody. That's no, that's highly inaccurate as well.
I think when we first met, I mean, granted, I didn't know all of what you were dealing with, but my perception of you, as well as all of my friends' perception, was that like you were just the best, most fun time in the world. So they certainly weren't seeing anything like that, nor was I.
There's definitely a side of you that you don't want anybody to see, because yes, you were. encouraged when you're active duty and training, to go overseas and be in a combat, theater. You're trained to tap into that aggression and anger, but it's like there's a time and a place. And that's definitely a side of yourself you never wanted anybody to see. So yeah, definitely didn't let that come out.
No. Anything else? Hollywood, civilians, perceptions,
What we touch on the hallucination flashbacks, the
aggressive veteran.
aggressive anger.
Well, oh, one I wanted to bring up because in my experience, I think I've even realized that I feel like civilian understanding for sure, like we have no understanding, not anything meaningful. But even Hollywood, I feel like is like underplays it from how I've learned to understand it as much as I've been able to is like your hyper vigilance and really like what can be going through your head at any given moment in terms of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or minimizing it in terms of like safety assessment and preparedness. Does that sound right, or is it more than that?
Um, that's pretty well hitting it on the head. There are some, we could go into detail on that, which I don't think we need to, but essentially you pretty much nailed it. Yes, so that is something that I think generally did get right. There
Right,
is.
Sal, because the more I've learned about, I'm like, oh my God, I would like now I understand maybe sometimes when you don't seem that present, if you know what's going on in your
Yeah,
head.
so yes, the hypervigilance, I know that's a big word for some people, but it's very accurate. Um, it encompasses a lot, essentially when I say big word. Um, it encompasses the preparedness, the safety, security, everything above. And
Well, here, maybe let's I'm gonna see again. I'm doing stuff I don't do with my normal guests. So I'm making them do stuff on the fly. Um,
I can pivot.
where like maybe I'm just wondering if you could maybe describe it to some sense. Like let's put us in a situation. Like we're in a I don't know, what is the situation you feel that would um trigger that type of response for you?
Crowds for
Yeah.
sure.
So we're at, let's say you, me, and the kids are we're at ACL,
Oh
the
gosh.
four of us.
Oh, that's an
Austin city limits for folks not listening. Where we got engaged. No big deal. But okay, let's so big crowded outdoor
yes.
space.
Oh, that's almost the worst case scenario right there, because you're very limited. But see, I'm already thinking of
Yeah, see.
that.
But so just like
Uh,
in 60 seconds, kind of
yeah,
like give
sure.
us a little taste of
So,
what's going on in your brain.
obviously, given the atmosphere, given the environment, given the location, there's a lot of factors here. But yeah, you're thinking about, how many people are there, and I mean, if you were depending on where you were, are you near, where are all the exits? And I know that's something that they do get right, generally speaking, in movies and in TV. It's like, oh, when I sit down somewhere, I have to count all the exits. It's like, yes, and that's underplaying it because you're also thinking about, I'm also doing a general count. I may not be exact, but how many people are here? And if something were to go down, are there anybody I would have to remove out of my way to get, not just myself, but my family to safety, and then you start going through, okay, how would I remove these people? You know, and so you're thinking exits, people, you're thinking, where are you in terms of, do you have any cover, concealment? Are there any weapons of opportunity close by you? Because given ACL, you're not allowed to take anything with you, even a pocket knife, so you have to think, what are you going to use to defend yourself? So there's a lot of different things going through your head. And so there's this level of focus that you kind of jump into inadvertently. And so I'm thinking what may look like, not being present is you taking a minute to be hyper vigilant or, hyper focused on this information and assessing a situation before now, okay, I feel comfortable with what I've assessed. Now I can start to quote unquote enjoy myself
Mhm.
or be present there for, your family.
And what might you say to someone, me, if I was like, dude, chill out, that's not necessary?
That brings me back, actually. That's helpful for me. I can't say that'd be helpful for everybody, but anytime, you pull me back out of, my head of being, hyper focused, hyper vigilant, that reminds me, oh, hey, yes, like everything here is okay. There are other people here that are responsible for that, and I can, maybe relax a little bit.
And I know a lot of the like cognitive behavioral therapy around PTSD for specific to those types of things is like possibility versus probability, right?
Yeah, I'm
Like,
familiar with
yeah.
that.
Is it possible that something goes down? Absolutely. We were just watching some TV show where something goes down at all times and
Oh gosh.
whatever. So,
Yeah.
and that's every TV show, but so not really helping there. But okay, no, I think that's helpful. That helps kind of, I think, give us when I get little insights like that into your brain. That certainly makes me have this level of understanding that I'm like, oh wow, yeah. I think a lot of women have their own kind of version of that. I don't think it's to that level. Like we have kind of call them intrusive thoughts. Like,
Oh,
right, they think
there.
about what if like the car just like went over the bridge right now. So I think people can relate to that. So maybe if you weren't thinking about that and you're someone who has intrusive thoughts, or anxiety or whatever, like that is what a little bit of what's going on here.
It's real.
Um, all right, so now let's go back to you and your experience timeline specifically. When was the first moment you realized that something, whether you were thinking PTS or not, that something might be going on, something might be off?
So initially I had a moment. It was after my first deployment, only a few months after my first deployment, where alcohol had been involved. I had been drinking this night, and I ended up, um, I guess you're just going into this, I don't want to say a blind rage, but I got extremely upset. It's all very fuzzy actually, but I do remember, the pieces. Uh, and maybe that's something to speak about too, but I punched a hole in a wall, and I ended up, from what I can remember, I just broke down on the floor essentially, just, uncontrollably crying, and I was in this loop, from what I was told, I was in this loop of talking about, all the, the Marines we had lost on that first deployment and the guilt that I had surrounding that. Um, Essentially, and then I was taken to the hospital, the emergency room, and to where, I was, essentially sedated, but, they just kept me there for observation essentially till, the moment passed. I wasn't like aggressive or anything that I can remember, to anybody at the hospital. But essentially they had said that, I had slipped into this little short window of like psychosis, essentially. Um, And yeah, that was that first experience of dealing with something. I didn't know what at the time, and I hadn't put a label on it, and neither did anybody else. Um, even at the hospital. But I guess they just, it was at the Naval Hospital on base, so I'm sure it wasn't the first time they'd seen that. And so I'm sure they just let it pass and, all right, here, you can go home now.
How'd you
I
feel and think about
About that,
that after the
I'm not gonna
fact?
be honest.
You're not gonna be honest?
Oh,
Okay, I'm just giving her hard
what did I say?
You're not gonna be
Oh.
honest.
There's a combination of two thoughts there. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't give it any thought. I ignored it. Just didn't even give it a second thought. Just said, okay, I'm just gonna ignore that and just let it go and pretend like it didn't even happen.
Green on.
Exactly. Um, and then after that, are we on to? Am I elaborating on the next times that I did?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, that was the first time something happened. Then yeah, sure. Next
Okay.
time.
So the next time something happened was probably, a few years later. Um, it was a fight in a parking lot. It was stupid. It was incredibly stupid. But I let somebody just did something stupid and disrespectful, and I felt I had to act on it. And then boom, I was I was triggered. I was in that moment, and I just I let it take over. And then after that, I can remember one other big one where it was a road rage incident. Again, somebody else. So obviously people are my trigger.
Trigger, yes.
Uh
Can I testify that's true?
people are my trigger. Um and it was a road rage incident, and I think this was the one that made me stop and realize, oh, I should probably get help for this, for because something's going on. But it was a road rage incident, and I had somebody else in the car with me, and that's like the moment it happened, like I had a revelation essentially saying like, oh, I can't say it was just huge epiphany, but it was definitely, some kind of revelation where, I knew I needed to, uh, it, I say, get help essentially. It's like, hey, I need to maybe talk to somebody, you
And then how did that feel?
know.
Or what did you think about that? After like,
My revelation.
or like that you're like, oh, now this stuff. I'm thinking back to the first question about all these perceptions you had about,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
PTSD. So like now that you're fast forward several years and kind of having this connection of like, oh shoot, something's going on and I need help. Like, how did you feel about it? What did you think about it?
This is still before I had been officially diagnosed. But uh I think I had a feeling that, I might have PTSD. Or we're calling it PTS now, right?
Oh, once you
Either or.
you have a diagnosis, it's deep.
Yeah, it felt completely different. But there was this feeling of embarrassment. Um and essentially, it felt like something that I needed to hide because there was still this negative, cloud surrounding it. I'm like, oh, I can't tell this to anybody, because the black cloud, because of the embarrassment. It's like, oh, this is still something very, very bad that you don't talk about. Um,
Did that change at all or in any way, good or bad or whatever, when you officially got the diagnosis?
um, it changed a little bit, yes. It was actually it had felt maybe almost validating to actually to somebody identify, hey, we see what you're saying that you've been experiencing. We recognize that, you have not been feeling okay, and you know, it felt validating. At the same time, though, there was this. I still felt like I couldn't talk about it. You know, it still felt very embarrassing to talk about. Um, Almost shameful. Um, like, oh, I have this thing that is still very, very bad.
Yeah.
You still didn't talk about it. Remember, this was over 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, so next question was fast forward now, you're sitting, we first of all, you've come on the podcast before to talk about your service, your PTSD, our marriage, how we worked through things. You've allowed me to talk about our story very publicly in all sorts of forums, and now here you are doing it again. So I'm gonna guess your feelings about your diagnosis have changed over time. So what would you like? Yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
The feelings about it now. So a lot of So first off, there's been a lot more support surrounding mental health over the last decade.
Mm.
Things have, dramatically improved, meaning like there's more recognition and acceptance, for all mental health, not just PTSD.
Mhm.
But that alone, has, I've seen that develop into, just like the surrounding community of, support surrounding, combat PTSD. It doesn't feel as embarrassing to talk about. No, I just don't go, parading around to, somebody in the grocery store. I don't tap them on the shoulder, and be like, "Hey, bro, I got PTSD, and it's okay." But if friends, family, not maybe not so much with friends, but with family, essentially, if it comes up, I feel open to talking about it because I guess I'm just in a place now to where if I can talk about my experiences or share my experiences, good, bad, and otherwise with somebody else, and if that can be helpful, I want to be as open and honest and transparent as I can because in just the hopes of like this might help somebody else.
And I bet there are multiple people listening right now who are thinking that it helps. So,
I truly hope so.
um, okay, so one of the questions we get a lot, are curiosities and as really so in those types of events that you described, where you're
Mhm.
like noticing, oh shoot, something's going on. Um, people want who don't have PTSD want to better understand what that experience is. Um, and I imagine most people who love someone with PTSD can kind of understand that there are bigger triggers and episodes like the ones that you've described. There may be kind of medium ones and then kind of mini ones that you probably deal with more regularly. So maybe for the purpose of this question, or at least the beginning of this question, let's focus on some of those bigger ones. Um, One, I think that's a misconception that people think this might be happening all the time to veterans. So I think it could also be helpful. Okay, so let's see. Your first experience was what year?
That would have been 2006
Okay, 2006 to 26. So here we are,
and
20
20
20
years.
years.
Wow.
How many big episodes would you say that you've had?
Ones that I can remember, or
That's
I
that's
can consciously think about, I could say maybe four or five, like really big ones.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I can think of two that I've witnessed.
okay, and then that would put that at five. You've witnessed two. I can think of three before we met, and that would be five.
So let's think about, or let's me, well, I don't know, whatever. I can talk about what I witnessed, but people are more curious to better understand what's happening to you. So what, in your ability to tell us, what can you tell us that you're experiencing in those moments?
So I'd say in the big moments, the big PTSD responses essentially. When you get triggered, you go from, it sounds cliche, but you go from 0 to 60 like flat, like no time, flat. It's just immediate. There is no buildup, there is no delay. It is instant. And it's crazy how that happens because the the best analogy I can come up with, and it is just for me anyway, it's so accurate. I think of the Hulk in, Marvel, right? Uh, that is so real. It happens so fast, and then and once you're there, you're there. It is full speed. Um, no filters, um, you know, no netting, nothing to hold you back. It is just 100% the Hulk. And I know that sounds maybe, weird or cheesy to some people, but I find it to be very accurate. It is, you were driven by 99.5% emotion. There is no logic, no rationale. Um, you are in scorched earth mode. And nothing, nobody could, you know, hold you back, hold you down.
Do you feel like you have, okay, so it's 99.95 emotion, very little access to any type of logic. Do you feel like you're based in reality? Do you realize where you are and who you're with,
Not, I'm gonna say not necessarily. I mean,
or who they are to
and
you?
that's where
I guess.
that's where that 0.5% comes in. It's like, yes, you're not an idiot,
Yeah.
right? You're actually a very smart person, right? But you know, your actions and thinking are essentially hijacked right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put
Um,
it.
so it's like, do you know who people are? Absolutely. Do you care? Not at all.
That's helpful to hear.
Or at least I say not at all, meaning like maybe a sliver.
So the example I can give is the last episode you had was
Mm,
when I was pregnant with our daughter. And
mm.
I felt like I could have used that to try and ground you, that I'm out here trying to bring you back to reality in the middle of the night and I'm whatever months pregnant. And talking about our daughter and whatever. And yeah, no, it didn't work.
Yeah, and that's where I say like there's still that tiny sliver of logic that is still a window,
Yeah.
but it's like a tiny little cracked
Yeah.
window, you know what I mean? And that's where it's like that there is, and this has a lot to do with the individual too, you know. But you're right. It's like it had very little bearing on the situation.
Yeah. Um, anything else you want to say about what you're experiencing?
I mean, it's actually it's and this is another word you never use, you know, either when you're still, you know, actually you never use the word scared. It's also very scary because just to know what you are capable of, and you're in a mode where you are capable of doing the worst things possible.
Mhm.
Um,
And feel like you're not in
you're not in control.
control.
You're yeah, and that's what's scary is like it's like you're in the back seat, you know. You don't have control of the wheel, and that's what's scary about it.
No, many of us can't. Whole point we're talking about this in the first place. So you mentioned, and again, context, we're talking about these bigger episodes where it does happen 0 to 60. But when we're talking about some of these more small, medium triggers, I've certainly heard you talk about it as more of there is a ramping up, a build that over
Mm.
time you've come to learn to identify and put in strategies to stop it from building. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that experience when it's not the 0 to 60.
Okay, I'll call those the medium moments, right? Because they can be stopped. And that is something I have to say is definitely it is a a daily challenge, which can be exhausting some days. But you know, a lot of this is again based on the individual and the amount of work. It has taken me a long time to get to this point. And it just comes with being intentional and essentially exercising that muscle essentially of, you know, that intentional muscle of the awareness, you know, that self-awareness that's I think that's the muscle I'm referring to here. Um, because with that over time comes your ability to keep those medium moments from progressing into, you know, those full on.
Or a ruin your day type situation and everyone else around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. Um, so yeah, putting, you know, the awareness, putting certain practices into, you know, real life, actions, that is what has helped me bring those things back from progressing into, I starts ramping up, I identify it, and that's where that self-awareness comes into play, and then I'm able to put things into practice and I bring that back down to zero. And it may not be an immediate drop back down to zero. I'm able to at least stop it because I recognize it. I give it a moment to feel the feelings, and then I'm able to remind myself, oh, hey, do this right now. And then I bring that back down.
I'm gonna jump around on our questions because I feel like we're naturally starting to talk about some. So, you know, great. And I can testify that great growth, a result of that. What would you say have been kind of the most helpful things for you to be able to grow your self-awareness, strengthen that muscle, and then any other, whatever coping strategies and things that you have? What has allowed you to do that and what has helped
I think
the most, perhaps?
what's helped the most, I have to say, is my family. I bring that to the forefront of my mind. You know, you, the kids. Um, you know, that's probably my biggest factor here, which I know not everybody has that. So I feel like I'm lucky to have that in my toolbox, essentially. Um, But I think the biggest thing about that is I tell myself like, okay, is this how you want your wife or your kids to see you? And obviously the immediate answer to that is no. So then that's what helps me stop, hit that stop button. Um, and then I think to myself, also, there's something that I heard a long time ago, and it still sticks with me today. Is like, are you somebody, or is this somebody that you would want to be with? Is this somebody that you would want to hang around with, be around in this moment? And essentially, other thoughts come to this is like, is this a person that you would want to date or marry? And then one I think is like, hey, is this the person you would want to be, your husband, or your spouse? Is this a person you would want to be your father? So those are the images I have in my mind. Those are the questions that I stop and immediately come to the forefront of my mind that help me bring it back down to zero.
What, is there anything you would credit? Like, or is that like, how did you come
Oh,
to just start doing that?
oh, I didn't just, yeah. So let me, in case there's any ideas of me just like, oh, this guy's brilliant. He came up with this all on his own. Like, no, absolutely not. Uh, definitely, over the years, I've had, chunks of consistent therapy. Well, first of all, I have to give credit to my wife.
Yeah.
You have definitely helped in so many ways. Um, but I don't want to discredit, and I want to give, I want definitely want to give credit to the counseling and the therapy that I have received, over the years. Um, and that hasn't been an easy task. I've seen multiple therapists, multiple counselors, some private, some through the vet center, essentially. And I'm not trying to give, or discredit anybody here. But therapy has definitely helped. And that's been, that's a journey in itself, finding the right person. And then once you do, committing to, those weekly or, biweekly or monthly appointments. That's also hard too. But being consistent with that has definitely been probably a massive help. And that's where I've gotten most of these. Um, I say most, not all, because most of the techniques that I've learned to use today, because it's like what I've learned through therapy, I've helped tailor to my own personal life.
Gave you the skills to even do
Yeah,
that. Or
exactly,
helped give you the
exactly.
skills to. And then you, of course, mentioned me, so let's talk about that. Um, what are some things, whether it's just help you, I mean, we can talk about it, I think, but we got questions asking about like in the moment when things are escalating.
Mm,
So we can talk about that first. In the moment when things are escalating and you're triggered, um, or you know, escalating towards an episode or in one, whatever you want to speak to. What are some things, I said your spouse, I wrote it as your spouse, but partner, we'll say intimate partner, have done that are helpful or hurtful. And it can be me or anyone else in
mm.
your life prior.
So I guess let me start with there have been I have been had other relationships before we met where things were not helpful and in fact pretty hurtful in a variety of ways, but they were not accepting of my mental health condition, and in fact resented it. And anytime, I was feeling triggered or something started building up to, a full-on, episode or response, they just essentially did things that um, progressed it, essentially. And before you know it, now things are, scream and shout. I was never violent with anybody, 'cause that's just not me. But definitely saying things, you're doing, you're saying things, doing things, anything you could think of that would, intentionally hurt this other person. Now, granted, they're doing the same thing to you, but
I
now
think that
now it's just an
are just the
issue.
kinds of things you were talking about that were hurtful.
Yes, yeah. Um, And so essentially, instead of trying to de-escalate, they would be escalating. And so now you're escalating and now you're just stuck in this loop. Um, Definitely not helpful. Um, so what was, largely different about you was uh you came to me with this, um, I guess the desire to understand. You wanted to understand more than anything, and that was new. That was new to me. I never had anybody stop and like, excuse me, and ask me questions. And felt like you were genuinely, um, concerned and wanted to understand, wanted to learn, because I just got this vibe from you that you wanted to be supportive, you know. And the way that looked essentially a lot of times was you just like stopping and you being calm for me, not just for you, but your calmness, radiated over to me essentially. And so I was able to put myself in a mode of calm to now be aware essentially and mindful about my responses to you.
Good job, Hannah.
And then sometimes, you would just ask, and over time, it's like sometimes you would just ask, or you would identify something like, hey, I see, you're looking, this is what I see, you're looking like this, how are you feeling? You know, and then a lot of times you would just ask me, hey, what do you need right now? Or what? That was a big question for me, because then that would make me stop and think for a second, like, oh, what do I need right now?
Yeah. And I think an important thing to hear if you're the spouse, like, oh God, this sounds like I gotta give, 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 and I'm not getting anything back in return. We're talking about managing PTSD in our marriage, which is, something we do to some degree every day, as Cody was talking about. But there are other days where he does that for me. Like just last week, I'm whatever, a year postpartum and having weird postpartum anxiety or whatever, hormonal anxiety. And so he's doing the same thing for me when I'm having my own stuff. I'm like, whoa, I'm super anxious today. It's like listening, trying to understand, what do you need? So, that's important. I'll come in as the spouse saying this of like, while PTSD is something that your veteran is probably managing daily, in some way or shape or form, it shouldn't prevent them from being able to be an active participant in your relationship, and give back then too. And in any marriage, right? We're not. Some of us are going to need more at other times, and then vice versa. Um, and I think there was a time the other week where we both felt like we were at 15%, but we have that conversation, right? And we're both feeling at 15%. So, all right, we're just gonna be a team and survive the night, with our kids, and hope that we feel more than 15 tomorrow. So yes, there is a lot of supporting Cody in those moments, but I certainly don't want it to sound like he's not doing the same for me.
Right, yeah, and it's, these moments are, it's not all day, every day,
Yeah.
kind of thing where, um, I know it's like this, I know this is focusing on me a lot, essentially, of these experiences. But that is what it is. Like this conversation is focusing on that. That's not our daily
Yeah, this
life.
isn't our whole marriage. And that's important to say.
Absolutely,
It
yeah.
can't be your whole marriage.
It cannot. And that's where like all that, from the veteran side, that's where that self-work comes into play, because you don't want this to rule your days and, ruin your days and your weeks, because it's like you have other things to, focus on in life and hopefully enjoy in life. And that's where, the goal is to try to make sure those are at the forefront of your mind and not these, intermittent moments.
No, no. I'm gonna back it up to another question we got, which another thing we just hear a lot about that people want to try and understand better, which our answer is gonna be, well, it depends on the individual. But what's new? People wanted to kind of better understand like triggers just in general. Like what some of, and we'll say your, because like I said, it's very individual. But what some of your triggers are, and maybe pick one to share kind of how you've learned to manage it better.
Well, I got a good one, because this one's a day-to-day thing. And like we said earlier, people are definitely probably my biggest trigger. Um, and whether it be in the grocery store or, largely on the road, which I know a lot of people can identify with, people not driving, appropriately or respectfully on the road. That's everywhere. That's anywhere you go. That's any state, any city, at least 99.5 probably. All the ones I've been in anyway. And it's okay to have the feelings. This is actually something we're teaching our daughter right now. It's like it's okay to have the feelings. Like it's okay to be mad. It's not okay to be mean, right? So I've actually been using that one myself. But I've been doing this for a long time though, even before we came up with that saying for our daughter. But it's okay to have those feelings in the moment, but I guess I tell myself multiple things. Yeah, I tell myself multiple things. It's like, okay, don't let somebody's actions ruin your day, right? Because also it's like, is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Absolutely not, because that car is going to keep on going, or they're going to
Not today.
turn, or you're going to turn, and they're not even going to be a second forefront in your mind. And the biggest thing I think to myself is like, and yes, it's disrespectful, whatever they just did on the road, but thinking about like, you are not a second thought to them at all. You are an obstacle that they need to get around or get past or whatever the case is. So it's like, do they care about you? No. And so that's a big thing that I put into my mind is like, oh, this person is doing whatever they're gonna do, and that's a part of it too. It's like you can't control somebody else. Even with your reaction, you are still not going to be able to control somebody else, no matter what that reaction is, if you're trying to essentially show them what they did was not right, which happens all the time. And that helps me a lot. Just identifying that my reaction isn't going to affect what this person does at all. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. Is it right? No. Was it illegal? Sometimes, whatever they did. And are you the one to enforce that? No, you're not. Does it suck? Absolutely. Are they going to get away with it? Yes, they just did. But telling myself, hey, like, you were having a good day before this happened, keep having a good day. Don't let this affect you. And the best thing I've always found that I can do, my reaction to that is like slow down, let them go by, let them keep doing what they're going to do, and just get as much distance you can from you. Yeah, remove yourself from the situation. And sometimes the best way to do that is like change lanes or increase my distance by slowing down or something else, especially if I have my wife or kids in the car, then that's a no-brainer. It's like, nope, don't engage in any form or fashion. Let this person just keep on going. So, like I said, in general, people, grocery store, also the same thing. You're around people, just, you know what, go down another aisle, man. Just don't, you know. You had other things planned for today, and, getting into an incident with this person was not one of them. So don't let it go down that route.
And I can say too, it's like I can't really think of any times where very few times, definitely not in a long time, where I've actually seen it lead to an incident or altercation with the person. But I've certainly seen it ruin your day or ruin your next hour or 2 hours, that sort of thing. And I'm sitting here like, cool, that ruined my hour,
Right.
or 2 hours or whatever it might be. So I can certainly testify that I think you probably have the same amount of triggers or a similar amount of triggers about it.
Oh, absolutely.
But
But it's just, over
the
time,
reactions are quite different.
the way you, essentially train yourself to, respond.
Yeah. And just like in a difference, and I'm sure other spouses listening can feel this too, of like, just like he's saying, sometimes I'm doing the same thing, right? The thing pissed me off, and maybe not an equal amount, but I'm like, yeah, that sucked what that person did, or that was disrespectful or unsafe or whatever. I probably have about 10% of the, the thoughts or the trick, I won't call them triggers because that's not what it is for me, but the responses of feeling whatever to it. But so just it helps me to know that he's managing that, and it helps me to know, like, I think it helps me to know that you're managing it. When I felt like you weren't, I was like, people are everywhere, they're going to be in our life all the time, like, and
Yes, people are going
yeah.
ahead.
I can't do anything about this. We're not going to become
Yeah,
recluses,
the city is only growing.
yeah.
But also a big thing for me too, just a caveat, is like, especially Reese is getting to that age where, she sees everything. She notices everything. And so it's like when it comes to driving, that's a huge responsibility, right? And my dad taught me a great example to emulate. My dad was a great driver. He was a very courteous driver. Um, and yeah, I try to use that as an example a lot of times when I'm driving too. But what I think more than anything is like, oh, excuse me, my daughter is watching. And even when she's not in the car, I think like, oh, keep practicing what you want to make sure your daughter's going to see, because I want her to be a safe driver when she starts driving. I mean, I'm sure it scares most parents thinking about when
Mhm.
their kids start to drive. And so, I want to set that good example, that intelligent example, for her to emulate.
Um, all right, so let's see what other questions we got. All right, keeping it with the relationship
Yes.
side of the things. Um, well, I'm gonna kind of make this a two-parter. If people are listening and they're not super familiar with what's going on when someone like why people what it means to have PTSD in the most simplest terms, and I hope this isn't oversimplifying it, but it's essentially feeling a lack of safety. Like that's the core concern is feeling unsafe. Um, so that can extend to a lot of different things. Physical safety that we've talked about kind of in the hypervigilance. But what we often see in the relationships that are really impactful is emotional safety. And and I'll ask you if you felt it or knew it that way, but I think I certainly felt it and noticed it, like not feeling emotionally safe. And I think a lot of partners will be like, it seems like they don't trust me. Um, and obviously that's, when you're someone's supposed to be someone's ride or die,
Yes.
that's an issue. So I guess one, you can elaborate a little bit on that, just your understanding of it now that I've given you mine. But then part two, taking it to, so say we're having a conversation, and maybe it's a little heated or a little more sensitive in nature, thinking about what helps you feel more safe and connected.
Um, that's a great question. Actually, that's a really good question. What helps me feel safe and connected? I think a lot of it for me is what we've achieved over our, almost 11 years of knowing each other, essentially. Our ability to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, is what I fall back on, and what we've put into practice, essentially. Um, in that communication, that helps me a lot. Feel safe is like, oh, hey, first off, I remind myself of, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing right now? It's that self-awareness muscle, right? I'm like, for me, that's what it all always boils down to, is that self-awareness muscle. It's okay, what am I doing? What am I saying? How am I saying it? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, then I'll realize I'm not coming across the way I want to come across. And at the same time, though, I tell myself, oh, wait, am I hearing what she's saying? Or am I just let me rephrase that. Am I listening to what she's saying, or am I just hearing her? I know there's hearing somebody, and then there's just hearing somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if like, oh, I hear her because I hear her talking,
Yeah,
but am I
yeah.
listening to what she's saying? And it's also when you say you're listening, it's like, oh, am I just listening to words, or am I listening to her body language? How does it look like she's feeling right now? Her body language, like the emotion behind, what you're saying, not just the words, right? And then I think to myself, oh, wait a minute. I'm just gonna use this as an example. It's like, oh, I'm responding to something because I'm having emotions about it, right? But at the same time, though, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Does she even need me to respond to this? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that even requires a response from me, or does this require me to just listen to her? And I don't know, that's just one example. But
I loved everything you said, but you were talking about emotional work you're doing for me.
oh.
Really, the question was more about how you feel, kind of trying to almost understand the opposite of like what's helpful from a spouse's perfect to understand as a spouse what helps you feel kind of more
Mm.
emotionally safe and connected and
Um,
talking about difficult things.
I guess the same thing, it's like when maybe what I'm saying doesn't require a response, but just to be heard, or sometimes just validated, which sometimes, it can be the most minimal response, right? Like, oh, I see this really upsets you kind of thing. I know it sounds like a therapist response, but it's a response for a reason. Yeah, it's like just being heard, being validated. And sometimes, like you said, if it's just, if I feel safe, it's like, oh, I can voice my feelings about something without any judgment, you know, without any
Judgment.
the fear of judgment or the ability to not have fear of judgment, essentially. But also that also boils down to like, oh, hey, I can be myself around my wife and I can voice my, emotional feelings about something. But all the while keeping in mind if it's something between us, it's like, oh, I try to stay mindful of like, okay, wait a minute, what am I trying to, accomplish here in, communicating? What am I trying to communicate?
So what I was talking about initially of like, I certainly felt that like, dude, this guy does not trust me. And I don't mean like controlling me, to trust me in that way. I mean, like this guy does not trust me to be there for him. He does not trust me to love him. Like those to keep him safe, like, emotionally safe. And I was like, I'm doing all the things that should prove that I am that for him. So is there anything to say that was going on there and that maybe, what kind of broke the dam on that?
We've actually talked about this before.
So yeah.
So no, I remember you're mentioning all these things. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those days. Where like, no, I don't feel safe, emotionally. Not saying you made me feel unsafe. I just wasn't allowing myself to enter into a space where it's like, oh, I feel safe with her.
And I'm going to pause there because I feel like that's important to hear, is because as a spouse or a partner, wherever you are in your relationship, I totally understand how it feels incredibly personal. It felt the same to me. Like I'm doing everything I can, to show you I'm here and I want to be supportive, and you are not seeing that. And so hearing what you just said, that essentially it's not personal. It had nothing to do with me.
And it didn't, and because I mean, a lot of it, yes, had to do with past experiences, with not knowing what a safe space felt like, or feeling safe, emotionally, um, to voice anything, everything, to be myself, even in when I'm having an emotional moment, or a tough time with something, but I think. Yeah, so yeah, I was definitely closed off a lot. I would withdraw a lot. I would pull myself back, I would, say, hey, I think, we need to take a break or something like that, back when we were dating, I would definitely pull back a lot. Um, because yeah, I wasn't allowing myself to feel safe with you. Um, but then something happened. Uh, I have to say that also, so first of all, you had just constantly been there for me. Just so there was that repetition of you constantly showing up, right? Um, Anytime I would like pull back, you still maintained like your position, like, hey, I'm here for you. You communicate that. And I know that had to be so hard for you, so hard for you. Um, and then, there was just another moment where genuinely needed your help. I was physically unable to help myself, because of a leg injury. And because you had constantly been that person that was like, hey, I'm here for you. You started to make me feel like, oh, I can trust this person. I can feel safe with this person. Um, so when there was, a trigger moment, a catalyst essentially, um, where I needed your help and you're like, yes, I'm here for you. And that moment, I know it happened to be just, I don't know, sheer circumstance. I don't know. Um, but that triggered everything from there, essentially.
Definitely. And so, don't injure or poison your spouse to create this, because that,
I mean, we were running together with that injury occurred, but just saying.
If anything, is begging you to slow down. Um, so I think what we will what we will drill down on here is the consistency.
The consistency.
Support and messaging.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you're saying. It wasn't easy to do. And so for the spouses listening, it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's the right thing for you.
Very true.
But, and it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to do it for your spouse. Right? We're talking about us. But,
yeah,
as someone who doesn't have PTSD in a relationship, consistently showing up for me certainly makes me feel good. Like it's not making me feel bad in the relationship, and I think we can all identify with that. So in that sense, it's harder to do here, but probably more, not probably, but more meaningful. Yes.
I mean, I think, just showing up in any relationship, when you care about the person is, can be hard at times for sure. And yeah, I can't imagine how, what level that difficulty increases in, a PTSD relationship.
And you talked a little bit about our communication.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you say our communication has changed over the years? Probably largely forced because of what we're talking about.
Yeah. How it's changed. I mean, we're intentional about what we say to each other. We both give space to listen to the other person, I think what helps is like, we care about each other and we love each other. And so we want each other to feel heard, number one. And then, I think one thing too, I know I've done this, a couple of different times. And I take it back, you've done it too, where it's, we stop asking like, hey, is this something you need my response to?
Yeah.
And that tells you like, oh, hey, you just be a tree. You just need, to somebody to listen right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't require a response. I think that's important just to communicate that, initially. You say that sometimes you're like, hey, I need to get your feedback on this. Then I know like, oh, okay, let me listen to everything she has to say first. But then again, I think it comes down to that individual person too. It's like, oh, okay, let me be intentional about my listening first without interrupting or without creating any kind of, I don't want to say judgment, but a preconceived answer on what I'm going to say before she's finished, saying what you're going to say. Um, so I think, identifying right off the bat, what's the goal here? And then giving that space to be heard.
And prioritizing that. Like I think about some of the things that like I'll tell you now that without even thinking about it, just like, oh, I need to communicate this, where, rewind 9 years and I would have not only probably not told you it, but had like immense anxiety about it. Like immense anxiety about like, well, I should tell and we should talk about this, but this could make things worse. This could push him farther away. And some of these things may have been now things that just like I almost laugh about and I'm almost like embarrassed about how simple they were. Um, Whereas now it's just like, no, you just say the thing. Or things that I didn't feel like there was always room for me having a bad day. Or having anxiety. And now like you're the first person I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm feeling really anxious. So you gotta know, right? I don't need you to do anything about it, but like, and you didn't do anything to cause it, but or if you did, then we're talking about that. So I think I used to have so much anxiety and y'all, we would have these like hours long conversations that just like would make things better and then make things worse and then make things worse like in the same conversation and just be so emotionally so exhausted afterwards. And I think back, I'm like, what the hell were we doing? It's so dumb. But that's where we were and that's where I was, and now it blows my mind sometimes how quickly we can have a important conversation and feel like safe and like we talked about and were supported and said all the things we needed to say and go about our day. And so I think you talked about the muscle. It's a muscle too, of just practicing and being consistent with communication. And, it goes back to the original muscle you're talking about with self-awareness is you can't communicate effectively without self-awareness. Mm-hmm. So making sure you're doing that work for yourself so that you can then communicate where you're at, what you need from your partner too, or with your partner.
Absolutely.
So getting swole on our self-awareness and communication skills. All right. This was one that we got that I think a lot of spouses can feel. They want to better understand why their veteran won't share experiences from their service with them. So, I know this has happened in our relationship as well. So, what is behind that for you? Because I imagine it's similar-ish, but again, just talking about you.
So I mean, experiences overseas are, I mean, when you're in, combat situation, combat theater, they aren't good experiences. All right. I mean, just as one could probably imagine, you know,
Or not. No,
or I mean, or not. I mean, you've seen movies, and so yeah, they're violent, and I know Hollywood does a good job at highlighting the engagement moments where the shootouts, and whatnot, explosions and stuff like that. And it's not all that. Um, largely, it's not, but there's other things involved with being deployed that are stressful, and it's that being having to be constantly um, hyper vigilant, like the whole time. Even when you're, whether you're inside the wire or outside the wire, meaning you're at either a little forward operating base, but that still gets under attack sometimes, or you're outside the wire. It's like you have to be, vigilant the entire time. We had a saying over there of complacency kills, right? And it does, because the moment your head's not on a swivel, that you're not constantly, checking your six, you're checking on your buddies, you're checking your left, right in front of you, that 24/7, and the reason why you don't sleep that well either, right? You get these micro doses of sleep, but so it's not always, getting shot at or shooting back at somebody, it's everything else in between too. So the entire experience is not, um, you know, adrenaline and exciting, what you see in movies and whatnot. But a lot of it's not pretty. And, um, you don't want to share all that, that ugliness, and essentially like for me, it boils down to you witnessed the most wretched evil in this world. Um, that you think was only, from the medieval times. Like, oh, this happened centuries ago. It's like, no, this stuff still happens today in other countries, and you have bore witness to that. And it is, like I said, the most vile things that you can think of, or that you've seen, even that you think you've seen on TV, you see that in real life, and you don't want to expose somebody else to that. And I say the word evil, I feel like that does a huge, injustice, because that's the best word I can come up for it. But if there was a worse word, that's what I would describe it as. And you don't want to, first of all, telling somebody those stories, you don't want to, it's like, you don't want to relive those. It's like they already live in your memory. You don't want to have to, oh, let me dive back into those in vivid detail,
Yeah.
because that's going to make me start thinking about, all the details surrounding that, which aren't pretty. But then now you're exposing that to somebody else, and yes, it's like it's kind of a double-sided coin. It's like you want people to understand, the things that have been experienced over there, but at the same time, though, it's like, no, you really don't want to know, you know, you don't want to have to expose somebody to that. Uh, and so talking about it a lot of times, as much as you want somebody to understand, talking about it and describing it, number one, won't do it justice. And number two, you really don't want them to know.
And so I think where a lot of spouses feel again that it's maybe a trust thing or a reflection on the intimacy or lack thereof, I guess I'm guessing is the feeling, and I have felt some of that in the relationship, that it's not for you. It's not about that at all. It's not about I don't want us to be closer, or I don't trust you, or I don't want to connect. It's one, protective,
Yeah, largely.
and two, like, this is hurtful to me.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, revisiting, some of those worst moments, it it's like you can do that with your buddies that were there because it's different,
It's already living in their heads, like you talked about it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and they
even
were
and
there.
even then, sometimes you don't talk about the worst of the worst,
Yeah,
And even
just
then,
being
it's usually just some kind of like, humor surrounding, the incident and whatnot. But a lot of times, actually, you don't talk about the worst of the worst, even with, the guys that were there with you.
And then from the spouse's perspective, for folks who may be, well, no, I really want to know. Um, you got to think about whether or not you can handle it. I don't mean to say this in any type of negative way, but look what it did to you, right? I mean, like, look what it does to so many from experiencing vicarious trauma. Secondary trauma is a very real thing. Um, and I have Cody's shared some with me, not any. Yeah, I remember the first time he said that exact thing to me of like, why would I expose you to the evils of the world? And to your point, it's like that word specifically stood out to me, and I was like, oh shit, like, oh, okay, I don't know. I thought I knew maybe what some of the stuff you were dealing with is, and the fact that you used that word made me. That's what for me realized I have no fucking clue. And then, I've seen heard other stories being in this field. I've seen other documentaries, which um, have given me more insight into some of those evils. And I really had a really hard time handling it. Really hard time handling it, especially knowing that that was something that you had maybe experienced yourself. And that's living in your brain, your heart, your soul. And that's okay, right? I don't think you as a spouse are going to fault me if I thought, no, I don't want to know. I don't think I can handle it.
No, not at all. If anything, that's helpful because it's like, oh yeah, it kind of reminds yourself that no, you don't. It just reminds you, it reinforces that no, you don't want to share this stuff, and no, you don't want to expose, this person that you love to this. It's like, do you want them to be aware of, hey, the rest of the world is not peachy, um, but this is, this is different for sure.
And I mean, to what you're talking about, it's like we can talk. You can have some of that connection and understanding without the full play by plays.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think too, what's helped foster more understanding between us is just like uh, the impact more.
Mm,
More focus on the impact of those experiences than the experiences themselves.
yes.
All right, we got heavy there for a second. Okay, so we're gonna do two more questions. Another spouse one we get a lot is like folks are really just desperate for like, I see my veteran, they're really struggling, they're not getting any care or support. Um, and I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I don't feel like anything I'm saying or doing is helping motivate them towards any type of
Mm.
care. Um, so anything you would suggest to a spouse or a loved one, anyone really, who may be worried about their veteran and wanting to help motivate them to get some type of support and care?
I think that's a difficult one for sure. Because it's like you don't want to offend, you know, your spouse, your veteran, right? Um, they don't always have to be a spouse, but you don't want to offend the veteran. Um, and by telling them like, hey, this is what you should do. First of all, no, nobody, I don't care who you are, nobody likes being told what you should or should not do, right? That's just like, for me, that's a trigger word. It's like, just the word should. But um but to convey that, hey, you're paying attention and you care more than anything. I don't know. I know you've always kind of, asked me every once in a while, like, hey, it's been a while since you've, been to therapy, I know, maybe, you just say the things that you've noticed, like, hey, I've noticed, looks like you've been feeling maybe like a little like this or a little like that, and it's been a while since you've, talked to your therapist. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know what? You're right.
And it's
You know?
another thing. Like I could easily say, it's been a while since you hung out with your friend.
Oh, that's a huge one too. Oh my God,
It's
yeah.
been a while since you went and played disc golf.
Disc golf. So it's like that reinforcing, those self-care um activities, whether it be therapy, whether it be, yeah, I love to play disc golf and I'll go by myself a lot because that helps me. It's like, yeah, do I love playing, with one of my friends and a couple of my friends specifically? Yeah, absolutely. But playing by myself, um, a round of disc golf is, I can't even tell you how therapeutic that is for me. Um, and just and other activities that that I like to do. Um, even working out. I know people say like, "Oh, work out when you're feeling like this." Is it helpful? Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like working out? No. But that could just be another activity if that's something that your veteran likes to do.
Don't feel like you know what those things are. I feel like having those types of conversations. So like, what do
Absolutely.
you feeling like this?
What helps?
You know,
Yeah.
what do you
I
what
think that
helps get you out of it?
comes back to that question. It was like, "Hey, what do you need? What would help? What would help you
Yeah.
right now?" And then if they're saying like, I don't know, because they're starting to get into that mode or that mindset, or they're progressing up to, having a moment or an episode, what we call it, um, then, like I said, having that conversation beforehand, knowing what they like to do and what they're logically, and rationally able to come up with answers for, and then, using those, put that in your toolbox, to be able to mention those when, you know, you notice that, oh, hey, maybe they need to go do
Something that's
something.
bothering
Yeah.
you. And then the last one was one we got I really, really liked. Okay, so almost 20 years later, um, been through a lot, barely scratched on the surface in this episode alone of everything you've been through in and out of service related to your service. Would you do it again?
Mm.
Would you serve again? And why or why not?
Um, yes. I mean that I feel like that's my, most immediate response. I think that would always be my response is yes, I would absolutely serve again. Whether good times and bad times, absolutely. But it goes a lot back to, which I know I may sound like, a broken record here because I'm sure you've heard it before, but there's this we call it esprit de corps. There's this this brotherhood essentially, or there's this connection that you have with these other for me these other Marines that I served with that a couple of them I still talk to today. One of them was actually my best man at our wedding. But it's like, yeah, there's you bond over these shared experiences, the good ones and the bad ones, but there's this um connection. Oh my God, there's a word I'm looking for that I can't find right now. Thank you, camaraderie. There's a camaraderie that I have, been close to finding in the civilian world one time, and that's actually what I do now. But that is the most camaraderie I've ever felt before, to where, even now, even out being out, if somebody that I served with, 20 years ago were to reach out to me, I would be there for him, you know. And it's like no matter what, it's like, and I know that's a difficult thing too. It's like, hey, if you need something, call me, even if it's just to talk, especially if it's just to talk, just whatever you need, because yes, I have had, buddies that I've served with commit suicide. I know that's a heavy one to talk about, but it's a very real one. But I always think to myself, why didn't you call me? And so that's where I feel even now, if they were to call me for any reason, it's like, dude, I will be there. Whatever it is. Even if it's like, oh, hey, you need a place to stay. I know it's a different conversation between me and you, but be like, hey, what, head this way.
That's the question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
head
yeah.
this way, we'll figure it out.
Figure it out,
You know,
yeah.
and I think that's what boils down to. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. You're not alone. And so that camaraderie, I think, has developed a sense of, always, having their back. I know they would have mine. Um, and I think just all the good things that have come out to it, I think far outweigh any of the bad. The person I've become today, the things that, maybe sometimes are the hypervigilance, for example, it's like, hey, you know what, that can be useful in a lot of ways. It's like take all the skills and the training, and I know it's not easy to do sometimes, but it's like you can put that to use in other places,
Yes.
you know.
I'm not worried
Um,
about our survival, worst case scenario.
but yes, I would absolutely do it again for 1.5 million reasons.
And I mean, I think too, the camaraderie that you're highlighting, like you're talking about the guys you served with, but I've certainly seen it extend.
Oh God, yeah. I have a really good buddy right now that he was Navy, and don't get me harping on that all day long, but me and him are, practically best friends. We make it a point to hang out at least once every, month or two, and we just go get lunch and we get tacos and a couple of beers. But we text each other all the time, send each other obviously, the dark humor memes, the goofy memes, we talk about work with each other via text, but we're constantly in communication with each other. And yeah, we didn't even serve in the same branch, at the same time,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like that camaraderie, it extends beyond, the guys that you've served with.
So you get this community, and where I will selfishly weigh in is I got this community because of your service. I got this job because of your service, let's be real.
You're welcome.
Or I couldn't do it the way that I do it otherwise. So spouses listening, you found us at least via this podcast, but the community is yours too. So use it. Use it. But anyway, so that's us scratching the surface, and that was a long time. Thank you, sweetheart, for coming on. If you're listening, I hope we get these requests sometimes to have to pair you. You guys come to us and say, "Oh, I'm looking for peer support, but can I be matched with a veteran because I actually want to better understand my spouse?" And it's like, "Oh darn, that's not what we do." And so, trying to think of creative ways like this that maybe we can get you a little bit of insight. And I thank my husband first and foremost for being willing to be open about his experiences. And I thank y'all for submitting questions in the first place, and being a part of this community. And we hope you walked away with something that's of value.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And again, I know this isn't about me. I know this is about, the spouses, the caregivers, the families. Sure. But I just want to make sure they know that all of you know that, yeah, anything, any of my experiences that may be able to help you, I'm more than happy to talk about and, maybe respond to questions too.
Yeah. Okay. We'll say part 1. How about that?
Part 1.
Send them on, everybody. What do you want to know? We want to make content that actually benefits y'all. And so does Cody, apparently. So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks again for joining us on the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. We thank you for listening today and hope today's session left you feeling a little more connected or gave you some insight into the experiences of our military and veteran families. Don't forget to check us out at veteranspousenetwork.org to learn more about how our military and veteran families can receive the support they deserve.